Planet X, Men Apocalypse, Yahweh the Enemy, Superman is Jesus Programming, Childhoods End. Check out this podcast at Leak Project, ladies and gentlemen. I am your host, Rex Bear, and welcome to the New World Order, where your mind is not your own, unless you take it back. First off, I really enjoyed the movies that I'm going to break down today, and I was also not surprised with the way the Marvel's X-Men series is putting a negative label on God archetypes in current society, and even previous ones. It is a company within the Disney umbrella, so need I say more? Now, as many of you also know by now, I am not a part of any religion, and if I had to classify myself as anything, for the sake of some listeners, it would be agnostic with a Gnostic heart. Oxymoron, I know. Not knowing and searching for knowledge at the same time can be quite confusing and a conundrum, and with that said, it has also blown the doors wide open. Personally, I have been more in tune, not only with nature, but other opportunities, mind over matter type stuff, and just understanding things at a larger scale. Truth is for you to decide. And if Leak Project resonates with you, fantastic. And if it doesn't, that's okay too. Choose your path wisely or don't. Now, let's look at the brainwashing and subliminal programming the Hollywood military mind control industrial complex has packaged and gift-wrapped for your assimilated pleasure. I would also like to add something before we get started. Do you ever find yourself emotional during a movie, a TV show, a song, a live performance, a newscast, a current event that you read? Maybe you're watching a football game. What do you think happens to all those emotions and electrical impulses your body and mind create? Where do they go? What do they do? Have you ever heard of the archons from ancient texts? Now, I don't know about reptilian shapeshifters or even archons. What I do know is emotions are powerful and real. The archons are described as beings that feed off of emotions, but don't reside in this physical plane. Most people only see about 0.01% of the electromagnetic light spectrum. That means they're seeing about 0.01% of what's in front of their face. And their brain will filter out another 50% of that, so it gets even lower. There's a lot out there we don't see with our physical eyes, and you can get proof for that if you have certain technologies or access to certain technologies. All you have to do is they've got specific lenses that you can look through that you can see different things that aren't there with your physical eyes, but it's really there. And then we can get into the whole frequency possibility or possibilities with different frequencies when you look at radio stations, AM, FM, etc. Physical bodies do break down into vibrations, literally, and there hasn't been any actual proof of a finite point. If you look into what happens when you're trying to find that location of matter, you've heard before that a cell will have about as much matter in it as a basketball inside of a basketball court, if you took that analogy. And they can't even really prove that from the information that I have found and gathered and researched over the years. Now, if you've got some new data to bring to the table, that's great. My point is, we don't really know what matter is. Have you ever looked into the research done when somebody has a traumatic experience? If you watch somebody get in a car accident, or if you yourself are in a car accident, a certain part of your brain is going to activate. Now, if you're watching somebody in a car accident and you're not the person that's actually in that accident, there are certain parts of your brain that will activate just like that person that gets in a wreck. So if you think about that for a minute, and you're very knowledgeable and you know how to cause certain effects and reactions out of people based on research, experiments, experience, etc., and you put together a nice little package, you can start affecting people subconsciously as well as consciously. Let's think about how powerful a blockbuster film is that reaches 100 million people or more. It's no wonder the media conglomerates have so much influence and control and are intertwined with the military-industrial complex, alphabet agencies, multi-billion-dollar megacorps, and religious institutions, just to name a few. And when you've got 6 corporations that control over 90% of the media, well, that's 6 corporations that are influencing over 90% of people that have access to some type of media. Even sports, you guys. Did you listen to that interview we had with Brian Toohey, where he breaks down how he feels most sports are fixed, but in a legal way at the top levels, because it's a form of entertainment? So what I'm going to do now is I'd like to break down the first film in this podcast that I'm going to discuss with you, X-Men Apocalypse. Go watch, if you haven't seen it already and you don't want to watch the whole movie, just watch the trailers. I watched 3 of them on YouTube. Go to YouTube. You can watch the official trailers on YouTube. And here's a few lines that are in these trailers. I want to throw these out there for you. Now, the first one, I'm going to paint the picture here for you. There's a couple of field agents. I think they're with Homeland Security or something. And they're in an office. They're talking about the first mutant, Apocalypse, in the film. And this is what they say. Some call him Apocalypse. He was some kind of god. He always had 4 followers, like the 4 horsemen. Here's another line. He got that one from the Bible, or the Bible got that one from him. That's from the same 2 field agents. Then, another line that comes out of their mouths. Some believe the first mutant was born thousands of years ago, and he was some kind of god. Now, this is from Apocalypse, specifically in these trailers. The next line I'm going to give you. I've been called many things over many lifetimes. Ra, Krishna, Yahweh. Now let's pause for a moment. Those are 3 very powerful deities and gods, all the way back Egyptian culture, you've got Hindu culture, as well as even modern day Christian culture. I'm surprised that when they came out with this film and said that in the trailer, that there wasn't a lot more pushback in the Abrahamic religious communities. I was really surprised because you could definitely tell they were pushing the envelope there. Now, myself personally, I'm not a religious person, and I could still see what they were doing there is they're attacking the God archetypes, those that have certain faiths and religion. In my opinion, they're painting a very dark picture of God forms, of God, essentially. Now, here's another line, and this is from Apocalypse again, the original mutant, according to X-Men. So they're portraying the original mutant as God. Here we go. You are all my children, and you are all lost because you follow blind leaders, but I am here now, am here for you. Here's another line. They will fall, and from the ashes of their world, we'll build a better one. No more false gods. Together we will cleanse the earth for the strongest. Everything they built will fall. All of those lines, you guys, are from Apocalypse in these trailers. Then it cuts to another scene where some of the X-Men are talking, and here's the line. It's all of us against a God. Think about that. What is that telling you subconsciously? What do you think's going through the subconscious mind right now? Is the subliminal mind being programmed? Don't you think that these movies have a huge impact on sculpting not only you, but others? Imagine what it does if you watch that film, you're 10 years old, you're watching it on the big screen. What kind of impact is that going to have on your life? And what do you think, just consciously, the first thing that comes to your mind when a trailer comes out and says, and has the big mean bad guy on the block, comes out and says, I've been called many things over many lifetimes. Ra, Krishna, Yahweh. Whether you're religious or not, what goes through your mind when that's said? This is fascinating indeed. So I just wanted to bring that out there, get your opinions. And why is it now that many of these Marvel films and TV shows are really pushing metahumans, the new superhumans, as the next wave? I was thinking about that today. I actually went out and watched The Suicide Squad, which is another good film with a lot of subliminal programming, obviously. But I was really impressed with that film. One thing I did notice is they're really pushing the transhuman movement and the metahuman movement. I think they're going to try and intertwine it in one. They're going to subliminally program people to think that there's so much more they can do, and then they're going to offer these little keys, essentially, of technological feats. Okay, here you go. All you have to do is plug this into your brain, plug this into your hand, and that's going to link up to a Wi-Fi system that's going to link up to a supercomputer. Put this headset on, wear this suit, plug in, enjoy the Matrix, plug in more, and then people are going to start giving away more of their personal freedoms in this electrical dojo, essentially, in my opinion. I think that's really what they're doing. And if you've seen any of this new virtual reality stuff that's out there, you guys, or had a chance to experience it, it is incredible. And this is just the beginning for the commercial markets, for the residential markets. So who knows what it's going to be like 20 years from now. I do think 20 years from now, people are literally going to be doing things in virtual reality worlds that will not only influence their monetary system, like how they live, how they interact with others, what they do. I think most of it's going to be this virtual system. It's just, and that's a whole other story. But let's get back now. I'd like to go into the next film, Superman versus Batman. Now, if you guys watched this film, another great movie. I really enjoyed it. And I think Lex Luthor was the best character in that one, personally. If you guys saw how Superman died at the end of the film, in my opinion, they're portraying Superman as Jesus. And that's why I put that in the title, because they're really pushing Superman as the archetype of Jesus or the Savior. And I'm going to tell you why here. Now, if you haven't seen the movie yet and you don't want to know what happens at the end, don't listen to the next couple minutes here. All right, let's go. Launching a kryptonite spear into doomsday and sacrificing himself for humanity, Superman dies. Or does he? Then, when it seems all hope is lost, 3 days later, at the funeral in Washington, D.C., with the in the background, the giant phallus symbol, boom, you see the dirt above the casket that just got buried start to subtly rise. Will Superman soon follow? Is Superman, a.k.a. Super Jesus Being, resurrected after 3 days, just like Jesus is in the Holy Bible? There's plenty of passages in the Bible that you can look up that say Jesus was resurrected after 3 days. You've got Mark 31. I'll read you the King James Version. And he began to teach them that the Son of Man must suffer many things, and be rejected of the elders, and of the chief priests and scribes, and be killed, and after 3 days rise again. Well, holy cow. That sounds just like the kind of stuff Superman went through in Superman versus Batman. I mean, wasn't he outed by the chief priests or the chief politicians? And the scribes are the news, the media? Yet he was killed by sacrificing himself. The spear that he used reminds me of the spear of destiny. How about Superman also being rejected by his elders? Just like Jesus. If you guys don't see the parallels here, I have no comment for that. I really don't have anything smart to say to that. If you can't see the parallels here, then this is the wrong program for you. Now, the final TV series that was originally a book that I wanted to go over with you guys, Sci-Fi Channel turned it into a miniseries called Childhoods End. It's a 3-part series. The first part was called The Overlords. The second part was called The Deceivers. And the third part was called The Children. Now, here's what I did not like about Childhood's End. Well, there were several things. I really enjoyed the film, but it was also spooky at the same time because you could see these underlying themes of this new world agenda, a one world agenda. You've got these fallen angels, they call them. They look like devils, literally. They've got the giant horns and they look like Baphomets walking around, like we talked about the other day where I broke down the Baphomet statue. And they're nice and they're friendly and they're intelligent and they're actually just ETs in this series, in the book. Yet they portray them as Satans. And it's just very odd the way they put it together. Yet, so here's the deal. They come down to Earth. Everybody's freaked out because all technologies are under their control now. The planes land, everything. There's no technology anymore on the Earth except for what these overlords bring down with them. So it's kind of like in Revelation in the Bible. And when this happens, though, the planes don't fly into the ground and blow up. The ones that are in the air, they get brought down slowly and gently, and people walk out. So everybody's speculating what they're doing. And these overlords essentially take control of everything, and at the same time, they do it in peace. So they offer technologies to get rid of all pain and suffering and dis-ease, to get rid of all pollution, etc., and they give this to mankind. So they're like, wow, this is great. And they haven't shown what they actually look like yet, except for to one person, because they're afraid that if they show themselves, the people are going to freak out. They think they're a bunch of Satans, and they're not going to offer any quality connection because they're going to be so freaked out, right? So essentially, they do eventually show themselves after they've offered all this technology and the world's saved and there's no more pollution and no more pain, no more suffering, no more disease. And then, after all that's kumbaya and everybody's great, then guess what happens? Well, Childhood's End. What a spooky name, by the way, if you really think about it. Some people look at that as, oh, that means that we're all adults now. I don't think of it that way. I look at it more of you're taking away beauty. You're taking away true kindness and happiness and no worries. And I mean, remember what it was like when you were a child, how awesome it was to go explore and do things. You didn't have to worry about bills and issues, really, unless you came home late. You might, get grounded for a couple of days or something like that, or not be able to watch your favorite sports show or whatever. You guys get my point, unless you had a bad childhood, and I'm sorry if you did, but you get my point. Most people had very good childhoods, and if you think about that, you go back to when you were young, you usually have good feelings. Thinking about if you're eating a certain meal, it can bring back old memories. If you had that specific meal when you were a child or younger, you just relive those memories. So essentially, let's get back to what happens at the end here on Childhood's End. Literally, all the kids start floating in the air, and the parents are like trying to catch their kids, and they can't because their kids are floating away, and kids float into this spaceship, and then the spaceship takes off, and one human gets on one of the spaceships in cargo that's an adult, and then everybody else is a child, essentially, and they go back to this other planet, which is the home planet of these ETs, and this home planet is a planet of fire and brimstone. It looks like hell, essentially what people would think of hell if you're a Christian, or even if not a Christian, if you think of hell as fire and brimstone. So that's just another weird connection they put in there. Make a long story short, this adult gets taken out of hibernation thousands of years later, and the ETs, the overlords, say, hey, you got on our ship, we decided to let you live, your planet's going to die in a few minutes, and you're going to be the last person left. And so he's like, well, I want to die with my planet, so take me back. So they take him back, and then there's this being, essentially, that blows the planet up after all the pollution's gone and all the pain and suffering and disease is gone and all the children have been taken away. Thousands of years later, they just blow up the planet. And at the end of the film, or at the end of the series, essentially what I gathered from it was, if you weren't one of those children, if you were an adult and left on the planet, that's it for you. There's nothing left. No soul, no spirit, nothing. It's lights out. And that was the basic concept of that 3-part series, in my opinion. So where am I going with all of this? If I was to summarize everything that we've talked about here tonight on the Leak Project, what does it mean? What's the point? Well, the point is, media is very powerful, and oftentimes religion, spirituality, mysticism, the occult, mind control tactics, agendas are packaged into certain TV shows and films. And when you look at the underlying theme, it can be frightening on one note and then enlightening on another. The more we become aware of these things, I feel the greater our power will be over them. I do not think ignorance is bliss. And at the same time, many people, ignorance is bliss. For myself personally, absolutely not. It's the exact opposite. Although I do remember what it was like for me 20 years ago before I obtained certain bits and pieces of this puzzle that seems to be all around us, that oftentimes we're putting together one piece at a time, yet on the other side of the puzzle, 4 or 5 more pieces are taken away. So as we grasp all this and harness it, the more we can learn and help each other, the further up the ladder spiritually I feel we will go. With that said, I appreciate everybody that's had an opportunity to be a part of Leak Project, whether you've sent in a really cool comment on the comment section, whether you've been a guest or anything that you've done to be a part of Leak Project in a beneficial manner. Much appreciated. I hope everybody's doing well wherever you are, and be the change you want to see. Planet X, Men Apocalypse, Yahweh the Enemy, Superman is Jesus Programming, Childhoods End. Check out this podcast at Leak Project, ladies and gentlemen. I am your host, Rex Bear, and welcome to the New World Order, where your mind is not your own, unless you take it back. First off, I really enjoyed the movies that I'm going to break down today. And I was also not surprised with the way the Marvel's X-Men series is putting a negative label on God archetypes in current society, and even previous ones. It is a company within the Disney umbrella, so need I say more? Now, as many of you also know by now, I am not a part of any religion, and if I had to classify myself as anything, for the sake of some listeners, it would be agnostic with a Gnostic heart. Oxymoron, I know. Not knowing and searching for knowledge at the same time can be quite confusing and a conundrum. And with that said, it has also blown the doors wide open. Personally, I have been more in tune, not only with nature, but other opportunities, mind over matter type stuff, and just understanding things at a larger scale. Truth is for you to decide. And if Leak Project resonates with you, fantastic. And if it doesn't, that's okay too. Choose your path wisely or don't. Now, let's look at the brainwashing and subliminal programming the Hollywood military mind control industrial complex has packaged and gift wrapped for your assimilated pleasure. I would also like to add something before we get started. Do you ever find yourself emotional during a movie, a TV show, a song, a live performance, a newscast, a current event that you read? Maybe you're watching a football game. What do you think happens to all those emotions and electrical impulses your body and mind create? Where do they go? What do they do? Have you ever heard of the archons from ancient texts? Now, I don't know about reptilian shapeshifters or even archons. What I do know is emotions are powerful and real. The archons are described as beings that feed off of emotions, but don't reside in this physical plane. Most people only see about 0.01% of the electromagnetic light spectrum. That means they're seeing about 0.01% of what's in front of their face.